of the Chicago Hilton at ABA Tech Show 2017, Day 2, produced by the Legal Talk Network. We're excited to be here. I'm Dennis Kennedy. I'm in-house counsel at MasterCard and for their Digital Payments and Labs group. I also am the chair of the board of the ABA's Legal Technology Resource Center, and I co-host a podcast on the Legal Talk Network with Tom Mile called the Kennedy Mile Report. Our guest, Sam Glover. Sam, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sam Glover. I'm the editor-in-chief of Lawyerist.com. We have articles. We do a podcast as well with the Legal Talk Network, and we now have a conference called TBD Law, and that's me. That's who I am.
Good morning. My name is Steve Best, and I am a consultant with the Affinity Consulting Group. I also serve the Law Practice Division on the magazine board, and I was proud to be the chair last year of ABA Tech Show 2016. I think we all want to wish everybody a happy St. Patrick's Day, even though none of us are wearing green this morning.
We've been pinched.
We've been pinched. That's right. So why don't we kick things off? Sam, tell us a little bit about about the Lawyerist, what it is, and how you got it started.
Yeah, I guess it's an online magazine is how we usually describe it for lawyers, although we get accused of being a blog as well, which is fine. But we also are home to what we, as far as we can tell, is the largest community of solo and small firm lawyers on the web. I started it years ago because I wasn't happy with the software options out there for law firms, and I needed a place to gripe about it, so I did that. And and over time it grew. And so for the last 5 years, I think Aaron Street and I have tried to build it up into something bigger and better.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's a fantastic resource now. So how much traffic and how many people are, what kind of audience are you seeing for Lawyerist?
Yeah.
The content seems like it comes out every day, lots of great content.
We do, we publish every day. And I have to preface the traffic question with, over the years, we started out just trying to get page views. But over the last few years, we have really tried to laser focus on not getting page views from non-lawyers, or at least people who aren't involved in the small firm community. So we know that in-house lawyers and big firm lawyers read us, and we're glad that they find value in it, but we're really not trying to get that traffic. And if the New York Times linked to us, we would probably just shut off ads for the day because that's not delivering value to the advertisers. It's not the kind of thing that we're trying to get people to read. So that said, we get about 150,000 visits a month, and we think about 80% of those are solo and small firm lawyers. We have about 75,000 people tracking us on social media, and we get about 30,000 downloads of our podcast every month, which seems crazy to me, but it happens. So.
Well, you guys have done a lot of podcasts here, and what I like about Lawyerist and you is that it's always seems true to your personality. So you're never shy. You've never been shy about expressing your opinions. It's just one of the reasons we wanted to get you as a guest, because we know if we ask you what you like this year about Tech Show or what's going on. We don't know exactly what you're going to say, but we know it's going to be sharp and incisive.
One of our core values is respectful candor. So I will try to be very candid, but respectfully.
So tell us, speaking of your thoughts on Tech Show. I mean, I know you've been coming to Tech Show for quite a while.
Yeah, I think this is year 8 for me.
Year 8. So tell us, what have you seen over the last 8 years, and what do you think is coming in the future?
Probably what's been most exciting for the last 8 years has been the growth of cloud-based practice management software. And
absolutely,
I don't know, I geek out on practice management software, so maybe that sounds boring to everybody else, but it's been neat to, all of a sudden Clio, in my case, and Rocket Matter showed up, and they were like the underdogs, and now they kind of own the expo hall floor. Right. So it's kind of crazy. But this year, people keep asking me what's new, what's mind-blowing, what's the coolest thing you've seen on the Tech Show floor, and I don't really have a good answer this year because practice management software it's not over, it's not dead or anything. It's just that it's here,
right?
And it's
kind of current.
It's current, yeah. It's fine. There are lots of options out there. They're good. There are new ones every day. But practice management software is here to stay, and it's not the big thing. So,
well, that's kind of what you find with technology. I think it's like electricity. probably thinking like the first day is electricity or like electricity law, and then
Yeah.
it just becomes part of the background. And these people just call themselves internet lawyers. I don't know what that would mean these days. So I think that practice management, like the long slog on that, it sort of seems, especially in the solo and small firm case, with the cloud tools, practice management really becomes a bigger part of somebody who's starting a firm or trying to grow a firm.
I mean, it should be fundamental at this point. And I was telling Steve that earlier before we hit record that we're kind of geeks. We pay attention to what's next,
Right.
and practice management software isn't next anymore. It's here, and it's starting to move its way back into boring territory, which doesn't mean like it's lame. It means now it's accessible to everybody in the same way that your iPhone is boring technology. Like exactly. It's now boring that anybody can post live video from anywhere in the world. That's when it truly transforms things. So I think practice management software is moving into that territory where you just have it because you have a small firm.
So what do you guys, because you both in the practice management space, what do you find are the, and features may not be the right word, but you know what I mean. So what attracts, what brings people to the practice management world now?
Well, for me, I think, and Sam, you tell me what you think, but I think that any lawyer who's thinking about starting a firm on his or her own now, or starting a small firm or has a small firm, would be remiss in their obligations to their clients not to have practice management software. But like Sam said, it's kind of here, it's current. I think that now we need to kind of press, the consumer needs to press, the consumer being us, the lawyers, need to press the developers for more robust practice management in that, perhaps some of the practice management systems right now don't include, for example, a general ledger, to run your accounting. And there's some of them, like Cosmolex, are starting to come out with the general ledger. I was talking last night with another developer who said, well, I'm not so sure I want to put a general ledger in. So that's my opinion. I think that integrating the accounting into practice management and not having to do this sort of best of breed stuff where you buy a little bit of practice management, you have to buy an accounting package, you have to buy a document management package, you have to buy a separate document assembly package. I think the consumer is now looking for the complete package. I don't know what you think, Sam, but I think that we as the consumers have to sort of drive the developers to what we want, very much like we talked about yesterday, how the consumer drove the banking industry to give us online banking.
I definitely think there's more of a demand for the sort of the all-in-one.
Right.
And I think most of the major software providers are doing it. What I think is really getting interesting now is watching some of those firms or some of those companies, because you could, like, we had the startup pitches yesterday, and lots of them mentioned AI in some way. And I've talked to a bunch of people who are here to sort of get a feel for the expo hall and what's out there, and many of them have AI projects.
Well, let's define AI for our audience.
Well, let's, because I'm not talking about robot lawyers who you talk to on the bridge of the Starship Enterprise. I'm talking about just software that is able to learn based on data that you feed it and draw conclusions about that, come up with suggestions about that. So, for example, document assembly is like this time-consuming, high-maintenance thing, right? It's truly transformative. If you can automate your document assembly processes in your firms, you can cut out scads of time, find tons of efficiencies. But it's really hard to build, especially if you're trying to build a complex document. It's easy to automate your letterhead, but building an actual complex legal document is a ton of time to configure it and set it up. And then it's easy to use, but you have to come up with a process for maintaining it and keeping it up to date as well. Well, what if instead you just let a piece of software scan your entire client file database, and it comes up with a list of the most likely documents that you want to automate. It scans them and identifies the variables that it needs and the alternative provisions that it generally finds in those things. It identifies what sorts of cases they most likely apply to. And then it comes up with, maybe it even extrapolates the questions that it probably needs to ask in order to elicit the answers for those variables, to fill in those blanks from your client. And then it essentially just gives you your document assembly, and then it watches the way you modify them over time and updates them. I mean, that would be amazing. And I spoke with a woman yesterday who is who is building an AI backend to practice management software that will watch the way you practice and how cases move through your workflow, and then suggest changes, and maybe even just offer to do those things for you, because it will learn the way you practice and then start taking over bits of it.
And then you have, and so what's interesting too is you combine the artificial intelligence with the bots, and then you have that going on, and then the bot is popping up telling you, here's a suggestion for you. You know.
So I've been making fun of the guys from Case Text because we've been talking about sort of a legal research assistant. And yeah, totally clippy for legal research. And I don't like that's not what they want to do. That's not what I want anybody to do. But the idea of, if you're typing a sentence, it automatically gives you a list of supporting authorities when you're working on a brief. Like, that'd be awesome. So I think we're mostly talking about augmenting lawyers, not supplementing lawyers.
Which, sometimes if you think about it, it could be a little creepy.
Yep.
If you think about all, that the software is watching you. But at the same time, I think that the legal profession really needs to think about its process, and AI would really enhance the ability for lawyers to understand their process and how to manage the process, and then how to apply software to the process to make things, more efficient.
Well, and the fundamental piece to this is you have to be collecting, you mentioned small data earlier.
Yes.
And you have to be collecting information about your firm before you can do anything interesting with it.
Right.
And so practice management software is the platform that collects that interesting information about your firm. And Clio's data report is so neat because it talks about here's how much, here are the realization rates for Clio users across the platform. So then you've got your big data, you can compare it to your small data and see how you are or aren't measuring up, which is pretty cool too.
And I think time billing and accounting also plays into that a lot too.
Oh, yeah.
Because,
Yeah,
that's
definitely.
really going to show you the financial back end of where you should be investing your dollars into technology.
Right, and so, but there is this thing about volume that's always struck me. So when you talk about document assembly, if I'm doing 2 documents a year, it's just not worth doing anything document assembly. 200, it's worth it. If I'm doing 2,000 of the same things, it's world changing.
Yeah.
So I think that, and then I think it's sort of the small data notion. So if I have practice management software, I have the time and billing, and I have a tool that allows me to look at that. And if I'm working on something for the client and it suggests to me, hey, in 60% of the time that you do this document for somebody, that you file a trademark, you're also doing this, then you can call up that client and say, hey, I was thinking, or you're at least reminded. And so that you're saying, this has become an aid to me. So to go back to what you're saying, when people say, is AI going to replace lawyers? Well, it may replace some processes, but it's kind of what it frees up lawyers to do and helps them to be more creative and more helpful to their clients.
And I think yes, absolutely. And in the same way that adopting practice management software and the data that it gathers by having you use it allows you to do more interesting things at a higher level, automating some of those lower level lawyer process allows lawyers to practice at a higher level that we really maybe haven't even thought about yet. It's not just this idea that you get to do the practicing law and not the document generation, which that in and of itself is cool. But maybe there's more useful things we could be doing for clients. There's a study out that has been cited by ARAG, which is like a legal insurance company that and I think I can't remember if they commissioned the study or if somebody else did, but we talk about access to justice all the time, and I think it's really relevant to this idea of automating processes and plugging AI in to make us more efficient. And so 24% of people who have a civil justice problem, according to this survey, actually hire a lawyer. So we're only hired in less than a quarter of the cases that we could be hired in. And of the ones who don't hire a lawyer, only 17% of those cite cost as the reason. Which really, when we talk about why aren't people hiring lawyers, we always talk about cost. That's not it. The other 83% of people say that it's either because it's too stressful or they just hope the problem will go away on its own. That's the opportunity, is to create a product that resolves that stress in a way that, and price is probably going to play into that, but I think, so I guess I'm taking a really roundabout way of saying, lawyers need to stop being afraid of scale, because if you can practice at scale and deliver superior work product, you can imagine things like, one click solve my legal problem, and that would be pretty amazing. And so I think that's what gets me excited about AI, which is not that far. I mean, I'm not talking about robots that take over the world.
Sure.
I'm talking about intelligent machine learning algorithms that are currently being built. And maybe they'll all suck for a while, but this is clearly where things are going.
So what do you think that the small firm, medium-sized firm lawyer does today to prepare himself or herself for, the implementation of software that's going to begin to track this sort of information for them?
I mean, I think a start is, look at, it's a good question. I think gathering data about your firm is the important thing.
Okay.
And
what kind of data do you think we need to be gathering?
Time. And I don't mean, I'm a big proponent of alternative billing arrangements when they are appropriate, but you still should be tracking your time so that you know how much time you spend on these cases.
Right.
You know if your flat fees are the right flat fees, and so that you know if you have a productivity workflow, how things are moving through it. And so you should be tracking that stuff in one way or another and gathering that data in a useful format so that when you have the opportunity, you can feed it information. And most software plugs into things now.
Right.
So you can connect your law practice management software to your billing software or your file management software. Soon you'll be able to just plug in your analysis AI bot that knows what to do with that information. So I think the main thing to do is make sure you're up to date, basically.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, I think, and I know what an arduous task it is for some lawyers to track their time. Mm-hmm. And I've been to so many firms where lawyers will, even those that are billing by the hour will try to capture their time at the end of the month before the bills go out instead of contemporaneously with the work that they do every day. And if I'm not mistaken, I don't know if you both have seen this on the exhibit floor, there are some software products out there that will operate in the background of your computer and help you figure out what you did all day and turn those into time entries.
Chromita is one that's been around forever. Ping is one of the startups that's trying to do some of that. And I think Smokeball just added a feature to do that. And yeah, you're right. It's neat. I haven't used the others. I've used Chromita before, and it basically sits on your computer and watches what windows you have open.
Right.
And because it can, pull the title bar off of a Word document, you can start, if I've opened a document from this folder, go ahead and assign that time to this client.
Right.
So you can do a lot of automated billing. And, that kind of automated time tracking, even if you do nothing else, at least you have some data about how you spent your day.
Right.
So.
And then I think it becomes, you really want to start saying, what are the simple questions I really want to know that all small business want to know that if you ask lawyers, they never know. Okay, so what's profitable work? Mm-hmm. What are my margins on certain types of things?
Cost of acquiring clients.
Yeah, cost of acquiring clients, all those sorts of things. It's interesting, the question about AI and solo and small firms, because it seems like, oh my God, this can't apply to me. It has to be so expensive. And there's a guy named Kevin Kelly who wrote a book called The Inevitable, which I've been recommending to people. And one of his notions is that AI will become a service. So the cloud is sort of as a service, software as a service, that sort of thing. But AI will become part of that. And so the AI will be something that we grab as needed. So I think when you look at
Watson already is a service.
Yeah, so Watson is, and so if you say, if I keep up to date, which if you're in a cloud system is happening automatically, it could be that the AI features just become part of what you're doing without you realizing that you're using AI. You just go like, oh, here's a great thing. It gives me this report telling me what my high margin work is.
That was one of the books that we gave to attendees at our last TBD law meeting, and I was skimming it as well. And you make an interesting point, and IBM's Watson is now you can basically use it as a service. And one of the people who is at TBD Law is down in the exhibit hall is a sort of firm that is really trying to build bots and cool technology called One Law. And they use Watson to make sure that some of the entries in their forms are correct. Because if you think about it, you can't auto-generate a document unless you know that somebody has entered an acceptable thing in a field. And that even starts with things like names. Like, how do you know that they filled out the name field correctly? Well, ask Watson, because Watson knows what names are. It knows what names are worldwide, and it can give you it can check that data and make sure that it's good. which I think is really cool. And it's a couple of cents every time somebody does that, and they can do it for others. They're doing it for all sorts of pieces. Like they're starting to use that their DocuBot, they call it, to build some basic documents for lawyers. And you can try it out actually. It's if you Google DocuBot, you'll see it. It's just a neat little chatbot that builds documents, and plugging an AI into that to make sure you're getting good inputs is a piece of that. And it's a really basic but smart way to subscribe to AI as a service. Yeah.
And I think this also begins to open the discussion of, AI and understanding your process and automating your documents really begins to open the discussion of alternative fees and charging people on a flat fee basis and kind of shifting the risk. And I think that's part of the fear that a lot of consumers have of talking to lawyers is, oh my God, what is this going to cost me? And, every time there's a demand for additional retainer, you've got to cough it up. As opposed to, I can provide you this service for this flat fee price, knowing that I've got the automation behind it.
Well, even like I've had a will draft from a lawyer for like 5 years. I've paid the first half of that service. It's just a pain in the ass, and I like this lawyer a lot, but it's just a pain in the ass, and so I've never gone back to finish the estate plan. I can afford it. That's not the problem. It's just a hassle, and I can't. I'm not afraid of. I'm not even fearing death or anything. It just doesn't feel urgent, and it's a hassle, and so I haven't gotten around to doing it. So yeah, if we get away from thinking that representation means come to my office during your business hours, because it's my business hours and my lawyer's business hours are the same. So in order to get to his office, I've got to take time off of my work, which is super inconvenient. And we actually aren't all that considerate of our clients' time and energy and money and stress. And if we're not billing by the hour, and if we have other tools that enable us to serve people differently, we can start actually thinking about creating effortless or less effort client experiences that they actually enjoy, rather than come to my poorly maintained office in a part of town with bad parking and
with your checkbook.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely the checkbook part. Sorry, we don't take cards. We're not going to make it easy for you in any way. I mean, it's. I want you to talk about TBD law because I think there's a lot happening here, and so some of the things you touched on about making it easy for clients, I think in terms of self-service, information products, video conferencing, especially for small firm lawyers where you're covering a big geography. Because I think lawyers don't appreciate how commonly it's not just young people, it's a lot of seniors. I think if you're doing an elder law practice now, the idea of not having video conferencing would be absurd.
Yeah.
But TBD law is about innovation in the small firm and solo space, and I know you've done a couple of them. So could you kind of talk a little bit about what that is and then what's come out of that?
Actually, TBD law kind of grew out of TECHSHOW, some of our experiences at TECHSHOW. TBD law is a partnership between Lawyerist and Filament, which is Matt Homan's meetings company, and you and Matt have worked together on LexThink before, and essentially we realized that at conferences like TECHSHOW, we got the most value not out of the sessions, sorry to the presenters, but out of the conversations we were having in between.
Sure.
With people like you guys, and you get yourself, you walk out of a session, and maybe the session prompted you, but then you sit and talk with Matt, and you blow each other's minds for 10 minutes before you run to the next one, and we just want to do that for 2 days. And so what we're really focused, it's small. We're capping attendance at 75 people, and we're not even sure that might be too big. And it's there are no speakers, in keeping with what I just said. And we bring people to Matt's meeting space, which is not an auditorium. It's tables with games and things on them. And it's and we ask people to first of all that you have to apply to come, and then we have to invite you. And the reason for that is we're looking for lawyers who are realistic about the trends that are shaping the future of law practice, and have a business-oriented mindset on that. We want people who are trying to perfect client service, but we want people who are willing to engage with big ideas about the future of their own practices. And then we invite a selection of provocateurs. All the sponsors have to be invited to. They're limited to a very small amount, and they are invited to participate, not to market to people. We don't have, as awesome as the expo hall is, we don't have one there. The sponsors are in the audience, and then we invite provocateurs who come to provide input, insight, and to provoke thought. Your partner, Baron Henley, is one of our provocateurs who we love to have, and
He is provocative.
he is, and that's why we bring him. We bought him a bottle of scotch to fire him up in the evenings as well.
There you go. That's all it's...
But so, and the idea is you put a bunch of smart, clear, forward-thinking lawyers in a room together and give them a push and give them some problems, and magic just sort of happens. And it really is. It winds up being just an invigorating, inspiring 2 days. I've never been to a conference besides ours where nobody opens a laptop. Like it literally for 2 days, almost nobody opens a laptop outside of breaks. Or sits there checking their mail on their phone. They're really engaged and participating, and then there's a community. We carry it forward. We use Slack right now for a chat room, and so all the alumni are in there together chatting, and it's really neat. And the idea is kind of what we've been talking about here: is engage with bigger ideas about the future of law practice, because often they're not that unrealistic. And you just have to put your first step on the path to getting there. So.
And how do you disseminate the results of what comes out of TBD law to the general legal community?
Well, we did a Periscope of like the hackathon pitches that we did, and we had published some stuff on our website. But we're currently wondering if that's a good idea, because the people who come to TBD law are coming up with some really innovative ideas. And it might be best to keep those under wraps. So going forward, we're not sure we're going to disseminate it at all.
Okay.
We want, and we're not trying to be secretive about it. But like at the last one, somebody mentioned a domain name on the Periscope while they were pitching their hackathon idea, and somebody on the internet just snapped it up, which is like, that sucks. I mean, I realize if you're going to mention a URL, you should probably own it. I get that, but we were like, oh yeah, like maybe we aren't ready. These are still ideas.
Right.
They're not ready to be criticized. These are just brainstorms, and we want to see what they look like. And some of them. So, for example, at our first one of the pitches was the idea of an airport lawyer, and this was, there are lots of business travelers who can't make it to a lawyer's office to take care of their day-to-day legal stuff, and so that was the idea. Is maybe we could, and there was a lot of meat on this idea at the time, and so 6 months later, the team that came up with that idea has secured a kiosk at the airport and is moving on it. And so, yeah, it's amazing, and I can't wait. In 6 more months, I hope they come back to the next TBD law and have a report whether it succeeded or failed, and so we want to give those ideas room to grow. So we may not actually talk about what happens at TBD law may stay at TBD law going forward.
This goes back to you signing your own will, because when I did estate planning earlier in my career, I always used to say to get people to sign documents, you needed what I call a focusing event. Which usually meant a husband and wife getting on the same plane together without their kids, and then they're like, "Oh my God, we got to sign the will right now." But if you could like stop by the lawyer at the airport on like a regular trip and sign your will, you would probably have it done now.
That's totally the idea, and I think where it's going is basically automating some of that document stuff so that you can do a lot of it through that kiosk. And then they're having basically a built-in a red phone, but on videos, so that they can Skype in and talk to people.
Let's think of something cool to do together.
Well, and I think like if you identify that core group of lawyers who really, you don't have to have remedial conversations where you persuade people, do they really need to go paperless? Like, you can't get any work done if you're still arguing about whether or not going paperless is a good idea.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah, so we wanted to elevate the conversation a little bit and start it at a higher level. And if you get all those people in a room, many of them are doing neat, innovative things in different bits and pieces. And so if you put them in a room together and let them talk, they're just going to build on that. And then next time we get to start at an even higher level. And it's really fun. You're right. I mean, it is a working conference, and everyone is exhausted by the end of it because we've just been thinking and talking for 2 days. So that's what it is. Yeah.
But it's cool that collaborations come out of it and other things like that. So there are actual results.
Yeah. Well, thanks for being optimistic. I mean, I think it's awesome, and hopefully the feedback you've gotten from Barron is that it's awesome, and
So,
I can't wait to do more.
One last question about TBD law. And if I think I'm a lawyer, I've got some innovative ideas, I want to participate, what do I do?
Go to our website and apply. It's at lawyerist.com/TBDlaw, and you can apply for an invitation right there, and we'll follow it up with, if you're a big law lawyer, we're probably just going to say no off the bat, but assuming you look tempting, we'll set up a phone call and interview you and talk about it. So,
Wow.
yeah.
So you really talk to people individually before they come.
No, we weren't. It's not just like a trick. It's really important to us to get the right people in the room. So
Fascinating.
Yeah.
So let's get you out with the question of so what are you seeing? What's your reaction to this year's tech show after day one? What do you see that's really intriguing you? What's bothering you? What's Sam's take on it?
I love TECHSHOW, right? Like, I come here to geek out for 2 or 3 days, and nothing's bothering me. I think the interesting this is maybe inside baseball, but I realized that almost all of the software down there in the expo hall, whatever the categories are, whether it's secure communication or lead generation or practice management software, all of them have moved beyond the stage of pushing the envelope on innovation into competing for new customers. And so they're now all sort of in the competition phase, and that's what's going on, and that's good for customers. We're getting, the idea of, okay, now we need to stop requiring everybody to also subscribe to QuickBooks.
Right.
So I think what's really happening is we're in the competition phase on most of those things, and then the spice, the interesting stuff, the real potential are those startups and the younger firms or the hungrier firms that are starting to try and bring some AI into the way they do things. And that's what gets me excited, is talking to the people at Case Text or Ping or talking to the other people here. And I can't wait to see in 3 or 5 or 15 years, 10 years maybe, that stuff really bubbling up. And I think the expo hall floor in 5 or 10 years is going to be a completely different place.
Cool. Thanks a lot,
Yeah.
Sam. That's our show for this morning. We have 2 more great shows later today, so be sure to tune in. And thank you for joining us on Tech Show Today.
Thanks.
Thank you.
That was fun.
Just
Now we pretend to talk.
I did one play, and it was peas and carrots and peas and carrots and peas and carrots.